Greetings and welcome. So I'm wearing the Islanders reverse retro jersey for this one because why not? I'll just turn that right side up. Here you go. So Canada logo there in the little puck. My wife actually got me this. This is a bottle opener, so not too shabby. Birthday present that arrived 2 days after my birthday because that's how things work with Canada Post right now. All right. So again, Saturday night. Let's go ahead and get this started. We'll start things off at 31. This team dropped one spot. And I was kind of in a tough spot tonight. None of the teams in the bottom three lost, so I kind of had to look and go, all right, well, Vancouver maintains last spot on the board. Vancouver dropped to last spot on the board during this week. And they stay in last spot tonight because while they did get a victory and they look great in that victory, the team that's just barely ahead of them, they had a great night too. So Vancouver's 7-11. They were 1-2 this week. But the team that's right ahead of them, that is sitting 8 in the Central, at least on the power rankings, and I'm assuming overall as well, because they are 4-10-2. They were 2-2 this week, and that's Detroit. So Detroit moves up one spot because they were 500 this week. They won 2 out of 4 games. They're playing better hockey right now. So kudos to the Wings for getting out of 31st place. Relax, settle yourselves. There's still a long season ahead. Number 29. These guys are 3-12-1. They had a week where they went 1-3, and that's Ottawa. So Ottawa stays in the same spot they were last week, and there are a lot of teams that kind of stayed in the same spot. When you have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, there's like 4 or 5 teams that didn't play this week. Or barely played this week, you end up with like 6. So, it means there's not as much movement. And these 3 are pretty entrenched in those bottom 3 spots right now with their records well below 500. We'll see if Vancouver can dig their way out of there, but it's going to be tough. Number 28. They had a pretty good week this week. They only played twice. They won 1 and they lost 1, and that's Anaheim. So Anaheim stays in the same place that they were last week. But I will say, for Anaheim, other than the fact they're still having trouble scoring goals, they're able to get wins because Gibson and Miller are that good in net. So they're still managing to stay at that 500 mark, 6-6-3. It's not me that makes up that's 500. It's NHL. And there you go. Number 27, a team that's dropping and that Anaheim could find themselves passing. They're 4-6-3. They went 1-1-1 this week, and they dropped 3 spots, and that's the Kings. So for the LA Kings, it was a challenging week, and they continue the drop. They've dropped 7 spots now in the last 2 weeks. One thing that I'm doing this year with the power rankings that I didn't really do last year, I'm actually keeping every single power rankings. So rather than track high and low, at the end of the season, I'll just make up a chart of here's where everybody went. Because it does kind of show that during the season, almost every team will have their rises, falls, and all this, and I do my best to keep it as close as possible. So for LA, 20 may end up being their high water mark, because right now they don't look like a team that's going to end up in the playoffs. Number 26, dropping 4 spots from last week. They're 4-6-3. They went 0-2-1 this week, so they lost all 3 games they played, and that's the Rangers. Now, in the Rangers' favor is the fact that 2 of those are against Boston, and Boston, they're pretty good. But still, they did lose all 3 games this week, and so they end up taking a bit of a drop in the overall rankings. Number 25, these guys are 5-7-1. They finally played their first home game today. They lost it, but I didn't really penalize them for that. They're 1-2 on the week, and they move up 2 spots from last week, and that's San Jose. So again, you see the 3 California teams taking up residence at 25, 27, and 28. And it's about where we expected the California teams to be. And again, it makes the West really interesting because then that race for that number 4 spot is probably going to be between Arizona and Minnesota. We assume Minnesota's going to start playing hockey again, right? Eventually? Sure, why not? Number 24. What a nosedive these guys take this week. They went 1-3 this week, and they're 6-9 overall. And that's Nashville. Yeah, Nashville drops to 7th in the Central, 24th overall. That loss against Detroit today, it's not as much that you lose against Detroit, it's how they looked. And they didn't look good. There wasn't really anything to take from that until the third period, and by then it was over, which is weird because they were against Detroit. So there's some alarming trends that continue for Nashville. Like I said, they were 1-3 this week, so they lost 3 out of 4 games, and it just feels like it's kind of slipping away. There's still plenty of time for them to turn around, but that record is kind of ugly. Number 23, they didn't play this week, so I'm just going to say they moved up 2 spots, and that's Buffalo. Buffalo moves up 2 spots because the Rangers and Nashville had bad weeks. So there you go. Buffalo benefits from not playing hockey. It's weird. Number 22, they also didn't play this week, so there's not much to say about them, and that's New Jersey. So New Jersey, who are 4-3-2, stay 1 spot ahead of Buffalo, but what's interesting is they actually dropped 1 spot overall this week. So Buffalo and New Jersey are back to being next to each other because somebody passed New Jersey and somebody passed New Jersey because they had a decent enough week. At number 21, they went 1-1-1 this week. I think they played St. Louis. That's Arizona. So for Arizona, they're 5th in the division in my eyes. I have them 21st overall. Again, they won 1 out of 3 games this week, but they're competing well against St. Louis. So we'll see how they do against other teams outside of St. Louis. I'm not trying to be sarcastic with that. The reality that St. Louis is not easily defeating them tells you that Arizona's playing pretty well. And so I felt that Arizona deserved to move up a couple spots this week. And so, yeah, they move up, and Nashville makes their way down. So I do think that Arizona's definitely playing better than Nashville. The great thing is they'll never play against each other, so yeah, there you go. Number 20. This is the biggest nosedive of the week, and it's alarming. They're now 5-3-4. They played 4 games. They won none. They lose 1, and then 3 of them they lost in extra time, and that's Dallas. I'm getting concerned with Dallas. So yeah, I have them 6th overall in the division. I know that for overall winning percentage, they're out. Yep, they are currently out. So that's one alarming trend that I've seen. They've won 5 out of 12. So you can look at it and say, well, they've won 5 and lost 3 in regulation. Yeah, and then there's the other 4 points there. So they're not playing particularly well. Carolina took it out of them again, 2 games in a row, and there's some concerns I have with Dallas's offense, which is not really new. Doesn't feel like that's new, does it? Number 19. They went 2-1 this week. I do drop them 1 spot from where they were last week, not because I think they played badly. I think Calgary played relatively well. I know that tonight's game against Vancouver may have been upsetting, and it does drop them 1 spot because the game against Vancouver, they weren't great, but they don't take any kind of massive drop for me. I think Calgary is playing well enough to stay in the hunt because they have Markstrom. This is what Jacob Markstrom does. Jacob Markstrom keeps your team in the hunt. You're going to win some games you probably shouldn't, and you're going to look back and go, wow, that Markstrom guy's worth every penny. Yep. If not for the no movement clause, I think he'd still be in Vancouver. The best part is we'll never know. We'll never know. So enjoy him, Calgary. He is, I think, keeping them higher than right about here. Without Markstrom, with the goaltending they had last year, I think they'd be right down about here. But, you know, they do have the benefit of winning 2 out of 3 this week. Although, again, if you poll fans of the Flames right now, they might not talk to you in a way that fans of a team that won 2 out of 3 games this week would. Number 18. These guys went 3-1 this week, and it's for real. So they're currently 7-5-4. They move up 8 spots. Yeah, Chicago moves up 8 spots. They started the season in 31st. They started the season as like, this team's going nowhere. And now they're 18th. And I could see them in the playoffs this year. They could be a nightmare if they're a playoff team. Now, they don't currently. The way that I did the playoff matchups in this part of the board is by winning percentage, because we know that if we don't get a full 56 game or 58 game schedule for everybody, they will go by winning percentage. So I might as well change this board now to reflect winning percentage rather than actual points, which will upset people when they say, hey, wait a minute, we missed the playoffs. We played more games and had more points than that team, same as last year. So yeah, Chicago, currently 18th on the power rankings board, move up 8 spots from last week. Great week for them, and they're scary. At 17, they went 2-1-1 this week. They dropped 2 spots, though. They're 7-5-4 as well, and that's Columbus. So yep, I have Columbus right next to Chicago. They split their games this week. They're very closely matched. And for me with Columbus, I am seeing some. There's reason I think to be somewhat concerned, but look at it this way: if Nashville stays out, obviously Dallas isn't going to make it, or Detroit isn't going to make it. If Dallas doesn't make it, then these two could be fighting for that last playoff spot, which would be kind of sort of awesome because they're going to meet each other a bunch more times. And I wouldn't rule Chicago out. I wouldn't rule out hearing Chelsea Dagger in the playoffs this year. I think it could happen. And the best part is if it does, you'll hear Chicago fans screaming because it means Stan Bowman's not going anywhere. So that's the best part, is that Chicago in a year where, yeah, well, we're probably not going to make it. Here's a letter to our fans. Oh, well, Taves is out. We're not going to say exactly why, but he's out. Doc's out. He got hurt in a game for Team Canada, so he's out for the year. And now they look like they can make the playoffs. And Columbus could be the team they victimize out of the playoffs, which could put Tortorella's job in jeopardy. It's fascinating. Number 16, this team played one game this week. They won it, so they move into the top row, and that's Pittsburgh. Now, I went back and forth on where to put Pittsburgh. So I end up putting them at number 16. Bear. I'm not sure what Bear's doing, but anyways, the cats are weird at night with the windows, and I think we've had these Arctic winds, and I think it's blowing stuff around out there, so they act weird, but it's kind of unnerving because I can't see what's going on out there, and the cats are acting weird, so part of me thinks wolf. But yeah, 16 for there aren't wolves around here. 16 for Pittsburgh. I think they've been playing. Again, they only had the one game this week. So many postponements that, yeah, I just move them up one spot. Number 15, they went 2-0-1 this week. I'm moving them up one spot. I'm not 100% sold on the Islanders, but I'm wearing an Islanders jersey because I have a funny feeling that somehow, some way, they end up back in the playoffs. They currently would be the number 4 seed, and they would play Boston, which, as Boston found out tonight, will give them a headache. The Islanders will give Boston a headache. Would I be surprised if Boston finishes first and loses in the first round to the Islanders? No. That would not entirely surprise me. I don't think it's a great matchup for Boston. So we'll see. But the Islanders, they've done well. They haven't lost in regulation over the last couple of weeks. So they're slowly moving their way up the board. They're not winning in big fashion to where, I bump them up every night. But yeah, they're still in this. Number 14. Moving up 6 spots. They went 3-0 this week. And there was a statement game for the Oilers. The Oilers' statement game being against Montreal. And the statement was made by the Oilers. It was also made by Mike Smith. And if Mike Smith can give them goaltending like that regularly, and if it gives Koskinen nights off and he gets sharper, Edmonton legit should be a top 4 in the Canadian division / North division. So the way things get interesting is that would mean Calgary, Ottawa, and Vancouver would all be teams that we don't see necessarily making the playoffs. Unless the Jets fall back, which is possible. So as much as the North looks like there's some separation going on, we'll see. Number 13, they didn't play this week, so I really couldn't penalize them. They move up one spot because Dallas had a rough week. So, yeah, Minnesota. Yep. Minnesota holds on to their spot in the West, and they move up one spot overall because it was a rough week for Dallas. So we'll see when Minnesota comes back on the ice, whether or not they stay here or not. So again, part of what's keeping this board from moving around a lot is that a lot of games are getting postponed. And so not nearly as much movement as you'd otherwise have. Number 12. Dropping one spot from last week, they went 1-2 this week. They're 8-5-1 overall, and that's Winnipeg. Now, the one thing for Winnipeg that has to be somewhat concerning is that a lot of the wins they have are against Ottawa. So when they get into playing against teams like Toronto and Montreal, how is this going to go? And so that's where things are going to get really interesting for me, is when Winnipeg is against the top 2 teams in the North. How do they do? And so we'll see soon, because again, everybody in the North, they're all going to play each other 9 or 10 times. I still think Winnipeg has the talent. I know Dubois is off to a slow start, but he was sitting on the sidelines for a couple of weeks, and he'd been sitting on the sidelines before that. And so, yeah, And he's also not 100%. He left practice early yesterday. I don't think he's 100%. So, and he missed the game today too. So yeah, didn't he miss the game today? I thought he missed. Anyways, maybe he didn't. Did he miss carry the one and cross out the denominator? Anyways, you guys know what I mean here. Basically, I think Winnipeg has the potential, but I'm concerned, so I dropped him one spot this week. Number 11, also dropping one spot. So they go 2-0-1 this week. But for St. Louis, they're 9-4-2 overall. And I don't know how convinced I am with St. Louis right now. And it's hard to get a read on them because they're just playing Arizona. It's frustrating, right? So Arizona, I move up a little bit. St. Louis, I move down a little bit. There's not a whole lot of difference between these two playing against each other. They're pretty close, which tells me Arizona was probably too low and maybe St. Louis was a bit too high. But again, we'll see what happens when St. Louis starts playing against teams like Vegas and against Colorado and, yeah, Minnesota as well, once those games are actually made up. So St. Louis and Arizona got creative to make sure they didn't have to make up a bunch of games later to open up parts of the schedule later in the season, and so they won't get absolutely swamped with games. It's been smart, but it's left it, so I have a hard time getting a read on St. Louis right now. Number 10. Moving up 3 spots from last week. They're 8-2-2 overall. They went 2-2 this week, and that's Florida. Now, Florida, I think the win over Tampa in the first game was impressive. The getting trashed by Tampa in the second game, I didn't really penalize them for that because, again, they played well early, and then Tampa, it was one of those gutsy victories that shows Tampa Bay is just that good. And I thought it said more about how good Tampa was, but again, I've moved Florida up into the top 10, even though they went 500 this week. And we'll see going forward where they're at. Splitting games against Tampa. Now they got to play Tampa again in Tampa now. We're going to get another look at them, and we'll see whether or not Stamkos is back for the next game. Because he thinks he's good to go. He doesn't see any reason why he should be sitting out any further, but he's still in protocol. So we'll see what happens. Number 9, dropping one spot from last week because they got passed. They're 2-1 on the week, and that's Carolina. So Carolina, they maintain the second spot in the Central. So again, if you look at the divisions, there's very little movement in the divisions at all. It basically, the divisional rankings stay very, very similar from week to week. And at the end of the year, I'll show that too. I'll have a chart for divisional, and I'll have a chart for the overall too. Carolina's playing well. Yeah. I had one team that I thought passed them, and we'll see how they do this coming week. But yeah, the top 10 is pretty solid. Overall, the top 10 teams in the NHL are pretty good. They're 9-3 right now. Not too shabby. Number 8. And the win tonight put them at number 8, and that's Montreal. Montreal 9-4-2 right now. They are 2-2 on the week. And I still think Montreal, now that they have a week off coming up, we'll see how that week off treats them and whether or not it's a benefit or whether or not it hinders their performance. Because you can never tell how a team's going to do with a week off. But I thought they played well against Toronto tonight. It was a slow start, sure. But that third period, that was pretty good. And Toffoli gets to double digits in goals. Gallagher gets a couple of points. Carey Price had a good game. Jake Allen's playing well. There's no reason to really panic if you're a Montreal fan right now. And again, that win by the Oilers, I thought said more for the Oilers than it did against Montreal. And not only that, but Montreal won that game tonight with Tatar as a healthy scratch. So a lot of reasons to look at that game tonight and say, yeah, that probably says a lot about where Montreal's at. And we won't know until next Saturday. So I'll only be grading next week on one game. It's possible they get passed by Florida and Carolina without playing a game. That's one of the hindrances of this schedule and with teams getting a lot of time off. Number 7, I should say, team that's had a lot of time off. They were 1-0 this week before they got shut down. 8-3-2 overall. They move up 2 spots, so they're the ones that bump down Montreal and Carolina, and that's Philadelphia. Philadelphia moves up to 7. I think they're playing very well. And again, it shows that I think the East is solid. You look at the top 7, you got 3 teams in the East, 2 in the West, 1 in the Central, and 1 in the North. And I think that's pretty accurate to how these teams are playing. But again, with some of the teams in the East being shut down, I just have that one game with Philadelphia to go on, and then I didn't bump them down after that. So I moved them up last week when they won that game, and then I haven't bumped them down since. Number 6. These guys lost that one game last week, so I dropped them one spot, and that's Washington. Again, and I know Caps fans are, and I've heard Caps fans complaining about how the Capitals have been playing. I get it. I do. But I don't think it's that bad for Washington. I think, it's frustrating to see them have so many games pushed back right now. But honestly, they're 6-3-3. I'm sort of glass half full on Washington. I think they'll be fine. Samsonov should be back pretty quick here. I still think Vanacek's okay. He's not going to be the next Carey Price or anything, but I still think he can give them solid goaltending so they can win half their games. And that's really the key, is to make sure you stay ahead of the other teams in the division. So we'll see how it goes for them. And right now they are still, in terms of winning percentage, number 3 in the division. So that's an important stat. Number 5, dropping one spot from last week, though they didn't play. That's Colorado. So I still have Colorado number 2 in that division. They didn't play. They're going to get back to playing this week. And so, again, I'm not punishing a team that didn't play. I had thought about, pull a team off the board that hasn't played in the last week, but then that's just going to mess up all the numbers. And then next week I'd have to throw them back in, and I don't really want to do that. So, and also with football, when they had bye weeks, I didn't take them off the NFL power rankings. So I know it's a little different, but NFL power rankings bye weeks didn't make a difference. So I did NFL power rankings because there wasn't any NHL, so I needed to do power rankings. I miss power rankings when I can't do power rankings. I was all set to do basketball and baseball if we didn't get the NHL back. Yeah, that's where I was headed. So, right? Number 5, I have Colorado. Number 4, and they dropped one spot from where they were last week too. They were 2-1 this week. They lost tonight. Again, I don't think there's any reason to panic with that. They are now 11-3-1, and that's Toronto. So Toronto, I still have first in the North, and I have them 4th overall. So they just dropped one spot. Again, drop one. There's a team that moved up this week, and so it just made these other teams slide down a bit. Number 3, also sliding one spot, though they won 3 out of 4. The question mark I have, though, is how good is Vegas, or how soft is that schedule right now? So the good news is, if you're a Vegas fan and you're saying, hey, you can't say that, and our schedule's not soft. Right. Tomorrow they play Colorado. So we'll get a much better idea, I think, of where Vegas is at when they're not playing San Jose, Anaheim, LA, when they're playing a team that's above this spot, and when they're playing a team that's actually up here. And so I think we'll have a better idea of where they're at, and I'm here for it. That's going to be a great game, and I'm looking forward to that tomorrow afternoon. So Vegas drops to 3, even though they won 3 out of 4. Because again, I take a lot of things into consideration, and that shutout loss against Anaheim, that hurt them and dropped them down. Number 2, moving up 4 spots from where they were last week. They did lose today, because I had the idea of, they might go to number 1. If they win today, they could go to number 1, but they didn't. So Boston moves up 4 spots to number 2 on the overall power rankings. And they went 2-1 this week. They beat the Rangers twice, and then they lost against the Islanders. And again, for Boston, they're playing very well. They're now 10-2-2. They're putting up this ridiculous regular season once again. And in the playoffs, they'd play the Islanders if they started today. So the one team that's beat them twice this year. So, of course. And then number 1, if you haven't figured that out already, they went 3-1 this week. They're 10-2-1 overall. The one loss they had was against Florida, and that's Tampa. I think there was a big statement made by Tampa tonight. I think that big victory over Florida was a huge statement that we're still the best team in the league. Vasilevsky had a fantastic game. Their defense is really, really underrated. And Tampa Bay has proven that even without Kucherov, without Stamkos, without Cirelli, at least in a short-term sense, they can still win games. And it's important to make that statement, especially in a season that's as contracted as this one, in a season where we're going to see, we're going to see a lot this year, right? We're going to see a lot of injuries this year. We're going to see a lot of big momentum swings. And I think Tampa's shown again that they're the defending champions, and there's a reason, and that they're capable of perhaps maybe winning back-to-backs. But we'll see what happens. So there you go. Power rankings done for another week. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.